Jimmy and JoAnne, the comments are often a source of entertainment. We've, right out of the gate, been joined by Vegan Goy, who is a regular user, and the Stable Foe advises our plant-based, non-Jewish friend to eat pork. So I don't know if that's good advice. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good, Jason.
We're doing fine, thanks.
Lots and lots of things happening, of course. And there's been a huge amount of energy passing to the Earth from the sun. There's a huge amount of energy passing from the sun. I think it's affecting a lot of people, making the craziers more crazy, and some of us normal folks are feeling like we're beat up, But
now wait a minute. I'm not sure if you're joking just about elevated temperature or if you actually mean that, Jimmy.
No, it's not temperature. It's energy.
It's energy.
You're right.
When you have sunspots and stuff from the sun, then there's an energy wave that hits the Earth.
Had a huge one on the 8th.
Well, no, it's when it landed here. Happened some days before that,
yeah. But
huge amount of energy from the sun, and it has blanketed the Earth, and it causes all kinds of changes.
Wow.
But it's energy. It's not necessarily heat.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? Listen, I always feel like if I feel this way, there's got to be other people out there who also do. But the knowledge that the two of you possess is so vast and often surprising. Jimmy, I didn't realize that you followed that kind of stuff. But just last week, I had Shepard Ambellis on the show, and he was citing NASA data and other indicators that there is a lot of electromagnetic activity and sunspots and things happening right now, near Earth objects and things. But there's so much political unrest around the world as well. And, for people who haven't perhaps seen Jimmy and JoAnne before, they can learn a lot about the two of you by going to your free web page. Of course, we're going to be starting our sponsor exclusive segment in just under 30 minutes, but people who want to learn more about Jimmy and JoAnne can go to LibyanWarTheTruth.com and check out the posts that they've got there. You can also purchase their DVD, Escape from Al-Qaeda. Their sponsors are going to get free shipping on the DVD. What are we going to focus on tonight during tonight's show, guys?
Well, first of all, the reason that I started looking into the energy from the sun deal is I felt like a sack full of assholes, and I started trying to figure out why. And it was this energy burst came from the sun. The next thing we're going to...
It's a medical diagnosis, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The next thing we're going to have some... We don't like Fauci, of course, and I dug deep, and I've got a couple of early medical records that I think everybody will appreciate, and they'll understand more why the guy acts like he does. We'll talk about that in our other show. We've got a whole bunch of stuff on Libya in the continued dirty tricks by everybody. If you remember, we talked a long time ago about how Shell of Germany did ground penetrating radar analysis all over Libya, and they found this huge, about 10 times oil and gas reserves of Venezuela on the shelf right in front of Sirte, within 6 miles of the coastline of Libya, right in the Sirte Basin. Massive amounts of the highest grade oil in the world, and a lot of gas, and that's why Libya has become such an economic target for all the bad guys. And so there's a lot of dirty tricks going on there. U.S. is right in the middle of all that, the dirty tricks.
Erdogan's right in the middle of it, and some interesting switches. The tribes have given us some information about Erdogan, about what's happening to him in Turkey, and what he's doing, trying to scheme up with Malta, another scheme like he did with Libya, where he gave himself the rights to the Mediterranean to drill illegally. He doesn't have that right. But he's trying to do it with Malta now to
to go on the other side of the Mediterranean from Libya and have Malta make some kind of agreement to give the Sirte Basin to Turkey.
Well, and to have Malta start drilling with him. And there was an agreement.
Money deal.
Yeah, 1948, I think. There was some kind of a fight over an area in the Mediterranean near Libya, and Malta thought they owned it. And it went through a big court deal, and it was given to Libya. They said, no, this is Libya's water. And Erdogan's trying to throw that out. He's trying to do as many nasty things as he can.
Yeah.
It seems like he's just trying to get away with whatever he can get away with while the rest of the world is so distracted with COVID-19, the United States election. I mean, obviously, these guys are political animals. They're aware of what's going on. They're watching the news. In many ways, we in the United States are unfortunately at a disadvantage we've kind of saddled ourselves with. I mean, we only speak English. Much of these world leaders, they speak several languages, including English, so they can listen in on what we're doing and evaluate and make their plans. There was that incident at the White House where President Trump was rushed out of the press conference due to a shooting outside. They asked him if he was rattled. You guys don't look rattled to me.
No.
Well, you know, and you mentioned that in all, not all countries, most developed countries, the students are required to be versed in several languages. In Germany, you got to be versed in 3 languages. And, you know, most countries, that's part of the education process. Here, you know, we're taught English. And
We
in fact,
can take a language if we want, but it's not required.
in Texan, we're not even required to speak English. We have to speak Texan, you know. So,
Spanish, I thought.
yeah.
Well,
Spanglish.
Spanglish, yeah. I was going to say that Egypt signed an agreement with Greece on maritime borders, like supposedly Erdogan did with the illegitimate government in Tripoli, which does not have the right to sign agreements. So when they signed that, they redefined what their borders are in the Mediterranean. Erdogan is drilling within those borders right now, or he's doing seismic stuff, and he came out and said, we don't recognize this is illegitimate. We don't care what our neighbors say. We're going to do whatever we want.
And see, all this goes back to the UN. The illegitimate, illegal government in Tripoli that was recognized, put in there by the UN, is recognized by the world as being the authentic government for Libya, and it's not.
No.
You know,
it's
that
just because they say it all
Muslim
the time.
Brotherhood terrorist, period.
Yeah.
We've also got, we're not going to cover it completely, but you know, there was a huge explosion in Lebanon. Beirut had a huge explosion, damaged miles and miles of buildings and people, and just massive amount of damage. And we're going to cover that a little bit. Very, very little coverage has been passed here in the United States on that at all. And it's supposedly a new kind of weapon that was used there. And Israel took out several Iranian ships in that area right before they did this. So there was a massive amount of offensive activities in and around Lebanon. And we're going to give a few opinions on that.
This is something that I want us to explore for sure. We've got this article here from voltairenet.org. Terry Mason, who I know you guys have worked with, he states quite definitively that Israel destroyed East Beirut. And I mean, I certainly don't know. It looked like a huge explosion, and I do tend to run towards thinking that these things are generally caused. Obviously, it could be an accident, but we're going to dive into that a bit during the sponsor exclusive hour on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We've actually extended it to 90 minutes. So sponsors of Jimmy and JoAnne and sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth are getting more bang for their buck. It is important for people who are watching and who enjoy the information that we share to sponsor Jimmy and JoAnne on Patreon and to visit LibyanWarTheTruth.com. For whatever reason, I presume it's because I'm Jewish, a lot of people on the internet want me to take a position on Israel. Being Jewish doesn't automatically cause me to know anything about Israel, and I'm primarily American. The thing that interests me the most is that there are so many people who blame everything on Israel. I find it implausible that such a small country could be so powerful and effective. I personally think it's a tool of the United States and the United Kingdom, as is the UN itself. So we'll evaluate that article the speech that Benjamin Netanyahu gave at the UN General Assembly, where he talks about this site that blew up. It is quite uncanny that he basically gave this presentation showing the exact spot where the explosion happened. He made this statement in 2018.
Well, in our opinion, Netanyahu is a phony Jew. We think he's a Khazarian mafia. We're pretty sure he's a Satanist. And the guys running Israel are not Jewish. And unfortunately, the Jews get a bad rap because these bad guys are the perpetrators of most of these activities.
Well, the Khazars run the United States.
Yeah,
they
do. And Israel violated Lebanon's airspace 72 times in the recent past. And just a couple of weeks ago, Lebanon said, no more. We're not going to allow you to use our airspace to stage attacks on Palestine, on Syria, etc. And so you don't slap the Khazarian mafia ever. So this may be a retaliation against what Lebanon said. And probably nobody over here ever heard that Lebanon said that. But it was published. It was well documented worldwide. And Lebanon is one of the countries in the Greater Israel plan that is a Khazarian mafia plan to be taken over. So, you know.
And that's a valid point for sure. And, you know, the counterpoint that I always like to look at is I do agree that there is a hidden hand behind a lot of the politicians that we see, whether it's in the United States, Israel, European countries, whatever. We see more of it becoming active here in the United States. Fox News, even us here, we talk about the deep state. I mean, really what that's talking about is this just entrenched, you know, group of bureaucrats who work in the government irrespective of who gets elected. Some of them are there 30 years. Fauci is one of them. Fauci's been in there 36 years. So to what extent does his power become so deeply rooted, and is he able to manipulate things this way or that simply due to the fact that he's been there 36 years and Donald Trump or whoever else has only been there 4? I think these types of supranational, bureaucratic, sort of fraternal organizations exist, and they work in all kinds of ways. I think they often benefit from causing other countries and even civilians like us to think that something was done by someone other than it was actually done. Not saying that Israel didn't do this. Even when I dislike someone and they get accused of something, I try to be very discerning in how we evaluate it. Now, we've got a persistent question here about you guys and how you landed in Libya. We've spoken about it many times, so I don't want to spend too much time, but just briefly, the two of you had created a very lucrative oil services business where you were using a genetically developed enzyme that could actually eat oil and clean oil rigs and clean oil facilities.
No,
and you guys...
It doesn't eat oil, Jason.
No, it doesn't eat oil.
Digest
We do a medical grade DNA manipulation of microbes. We link all these pieces of microbes together and we produce an enzyme. We kill all the living portion off. And the enzyme goes in and cleans up the near borehole area of an oil well and allows it to produce more oil. We clean up pipelines, sludge pits, chicken fat, and we literally make millions of different varieties.
You should sell that to Chicago. Sludge pits and chicken fat.
and very, very successful. We rejuvenated more than 7,000 oil wells worldwide, less than 100 failures, and those were all mechanical problems. And so based on our successes, we were looking to expand our business. And Libya was absolutely open. It had its oil and gas production. Oil production had gone from 3.8 million barrels of oil a day down to less than 1 million. That has our name on it. Those are the kinds of problems we cure. Yeah. And so we went into Libya not knowing whether we'd be able to do any business or not. We got a contract the first trip in there.
We went in 2007, January. We were one of the first people to get a visa into Libya, which had never had any travel for, had been
no tourism at all.
Been sanctioned forever. Through a friend of mine in England who was
member of the royal family.
And from that point forward, we got to know the Libyans real well.
First trip in, we garnered a contract worth between 600 million and $1 billion of our product. That's not including the labor and everything go along with it. First trip in, and JoAnne and I are the entire sales force for our company. And we were back in Libya many times, 17 times from 2007 through 2011. We went all over Libya. Every time we'd go back, we'd get another contract.
The Libyans it that it's just us, because they have so many big companies in there with people representing this and representing that. And it was just us, and they like that.
We never do business in the country. We always have agents and everybody that we join hands with. And Libya became such a huge market, we moved all our production and marketing into Libya, and all of that was on the water moving into Libya in early 2011. When the phony civil war started, they blew Libya up, and of course we lost $200 million. We lost all the feedstock, all the materials to build our large-scale enzyme production plant. All that went into Misrata. It's all been sold off or stolen or whatever. All our money that was in the bank accounts that bonded the $5 billion worth of contracts, all that disappeared. Got back here to the United States. We were asked to go into Libya to head a fact-finding commission. We agreed to do that. Went into Libya in May of 2011. We were there all through the summer. We were put on the kill list by the CIA, picked up by Al-Qaeda, taken to their torture center where we were to be killed and chopped up and burned.
Yeah, and this is where the DVD comes into play, because people can hear all about the story of how you guys escaped. The only known...
We got attacked by this country when we came home. When we got home
the only known individuals to have escaped from Al-Qaeda. So it's a fascinating story that people who want to learn more about you can purchase the DVD for $15. It's going to ship to them within the United States for $5. But really the best way to get it is to become a sponsor of Jimmy and JoAnne on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty. You could even go back and look at some of the past episodes where the two of you have gone into great detail about the production and the really cool trucks that you had built that were working all these enzymes and everything. And now you've been focusing your time on getting the word out as far as what's going on in Libya. And every week we're doing our sponsor exclusive show on Monday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And we really want people to tune in and listen to what we're going to be talking about. We're just about 10 minutes away from that. And I know you guys have some more stuff you want to fill people in on what they're going to hear tonight.
Got a bunch of financial news. Crazy things that are going on in the markets that should have everybody alert. If you'll remember, Jason, gosh, it was a year and a half ago, I told everybody that the futures contracts on one company that builds circuit boards for military suppliers, and their futures contract, a guaranteed delivered contract, had silver at $50 an ounce, and everybody thought I was smoking some high-test dope. Well, silver 1 ounce ingots are now selling for rounds or square. They're selling from $33 to $35 per ingot, per round, or per little bar per ounce. So, it's feasible to see that the people that bought that contract, I think it was a 2022 contract, delivery was at $50 an ounce. Obviously, when they did that, silver was at $14 an ounce. But it's a hard, guaranteed delivery. Huge penalties if the silver wasn't delivered. This really is indicative of how worthless the dollar is, because for metal to go up like it has finally, is really indicative of how bad the dollar is. And we've got reports about how China and Russia are completely off the dollar now. They're not transferring any money, any international business via the dollar. Lots and lots of financial information and what's going on in the United States and what's going on in other places that don't make sense. JoAnne's got a lot on COVID-19 about how this grand plan, this false takeover of the world is being affected via the
talking about hydroxychloroquine and some other things, and
well, you'll both be pleased to hear that Nancy tells us she is smoking some high-test dope all day long.
Good.
Perhaps she's in California or another state where it's legal. You know, this is so strange. Every day except today, I've constantly been accused of being a Mossad agent, working for Israel, shilling for Israel. Now some dope I've never seen before named Carlos Collazo accuses me. He says, nice of you to erase pro-Israel perspectives in the chat. I'm offended by that comment because it's accusing me of doing something that I haven't done. Carlos is obviously a dope who jumps to conclusions without evidence. I haven't erased anything. I'm certainly not erasing a pro-Israel perspective or an anti-Israel perspective. You guys contacted me earlier today with a story that said Israel destroyed Lebanon. And anytime somebody tells me something definitive like that, I first want to see the evidence. And when I see problems with the evidence, I want to be sort of like an impartial judge where I'm raising points that might annoy one side, but I'm not doing it to annoy them. This is ridiculous what this guy Carlos says. I hope he goes away.
Jason, I hate the fact that we have to use the name Israel at all, because it's really not the Jews that are doing this. It's the Khazarian Mafia. It's the bad guys, and they're fake Jews. And unfortunately, they control the body politic in Israel. But they are not Jews. They're Satanists. They're Zionists. They're bad guys. And I hate to have to use the term Israel because everybody, oh, that's Jew. No, it's not the same thing. The Khazarian Mafia are not Jews, period. And I've said that, I think, every show.
My position on the whole thing is that after World War II, the country of Israel was created by the individuals that you're talking about with the specific intent of doing exactly what it's doing right here in the comments, creating an argument. It's exactly like Black Lives Matters in that. The statement in and of itself, you really can't argue with unless you're a hateful maniac who just wants to kill black people. Obviously, Black Lives Matter. But if you stand against that charity or that organization, then you're immediately racist. It's a divisive thing.
The same guys that fund Black Lives Matter, Antifa, are the same guys that run in Israel. The same bad guys, Satanists, all over the world. They own 160.
It's a creation of chaos.
They own 160.
Exactly, JoAnne. They want the chaos. They create an entity that will inherently stir conflict. That's what they want. And we want to dissect that. Well, we're almost out of time here before we transition to the Patreon segment. And I do hope that people will tune in for that, because I know that you guys have a lot of concentrated information that you want to share with people. We're going to be on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. A lot of people don't want me to address some of these social engineering trolls in the comments, but sometimes it gets them to shut up and go away. So sometimes I'll do it and sometimes I won't. Jimmy and JoAnne, we'll see you guys in just 5 minutes on the sponsor exclusive segment.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
And thanks for watching, everybody.